Mr. Speaker, H.R. 7181, the Human Trafficking Prevention Act of 2022, would provide for the posting of the contact information at the National Human Trafficking Hotline in the restrooms of our country's transportation centers, where we know many trafficking victims pass through, as well as all federal buildings, ports of entry, to inform victims and those who witness suspected trafficking situations that help is available. As I have said many times before, smuggling people across international borders is an equally troubling crime, but distinct from human trafficking. Smugglers must be prosecuted, and the exploitation of their victims must not go unpunished. And while many believe human trafficking happens only in other countries, the victimization of adults, youth, and children for the purposes of performing labor, commercial, sex acts, and other services happens on an enormous scale in rural, urban, and suburban communities across the United States. We can document that by many organizations who are fighting the scourge of human trafficking. H.R. 7181 would require the posting of National Human Trafficking Hotlines contact information in all federal buildings, require the Department of Transportation and the Department of Health and Human Services to coordinate with owners and operators of transportation hubs, such as airports, bus stations, and train stations, to post the contact information for the hotline in their restrooms. And 3, require the Department of Health and Human Services and other appropriate federal agencies to post the hotline's contact information at every port of entry. In 2020, more than 11,193 instances of potential human trafficking were reported to the United States National Human Trafficking Hotline. And in Texas, there are approximately, or reportedly, 313,000 victims of human trafficking at any given time, including 79,000 children and youth who are victims of sex trafficking, 234,000 adults who are victims of labor trafficking. The victims of human trafficking tend to be concealed, living in fear and isolated, in some cases physically and in cases emotionally. They might remain under the control of their traffickers for a variety of reasons, including a lack of the basic necessities to escape, like transportation or a safe place to go. Some may be afraid for their safety, while others may not recognize that they're under the control of their trafficker. And even after they're rescued or escape, there's always a possibility the victims will be re-victimized. The National Human Trafficking Hotline is an essential component of the fight to end human trafficking, offering toll-free phone lines and SMS text lines that are available 24 hours a day. Every day of the year, the hotline provides help, safety, and hope to victims and survivors by connecting them to the support and services they need. They must know that they are not alone. That is the most important message that we want to give on the floor of the House today. The victims of sex trafficking, human trafficking, the children, the adult victims are not alone. And victims in crisis can receive assistance with safety planning, emotional support, and or immediate connections to emergency services, while survivors can get the help in rebuilding their lives. Mr. Speaker, that is an important aspect of this legislation and the legislation we're putting forward today. The hotline also plays a vital role in combating human trafficking by helping law enforcement identify and rescue victims, by receiving tips about a potential situation of human trafficking, and by providing reports of tips to the appropriate authorities. We must make every effort to identify victims and ensure victims and survivors of human trafficking are connected to services that can lead them to safety and help them begin to restore their lives. That begins with reaching them where they are and letting them know who they can call on for help without risking their safety. Traffickers rely on our nation's transportation infrastructure to transport their victims from city to city and state to state. In the brief moments that allow victims to have a moment alone in the restroom of a bus station or airport, they may be able to call or even text for help as they are left alone for a moment by those traffickers. Victims, survivors, and concerned citizens need to know that help is just a phone call away, because one call could mean that difference between life and death. Despite the clandestine nature of human trafficking, we have learned from survivors that opportunities do exist to reach victims, and we should make the most of them. H.R. 7181, the Human Trafficking Prevention Act of 2022, does exactly that. And so I'm very grateful to Representatives Jeffries, Bass, Issa, and Mace for introducing this strategic and practical measure. I ask my colleagues to join me in supporting this bipartisan bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.